Good morning. The Ways and Means will now be called to order. Mr. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Alderwoman Davis, Alderman Moore, Alderman Vaccaro, Alderwoman Howard, Alderwoman Murphy, Alderwoman Boyd, Alderman Muhammad, Chairman Williamson,
Here.
President Reed. You have 4 present, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Today we have 2 departments, county departments on the agenda today. We have the Sheriff's Office and also the Circuit Attorney. First on the agenda will be the Sheriff's Office, and we're going to ask the Sheriff for the City of St. Louis to come up to the podium and be more than happy to present his presentation. Good morning, Sheriff.
Good morning, Chairman. Good to see you this morning.
Likewise, sir.
Frank Williams. And to the rest of the board, good to see you all also. We have a very, very short presentation. We just want to present a couple of items before the board, help them to understand where we stand as a sheriff department, and see if we can get some help from City Hall to help us move forward. We have about 152 deputies presently working, and we've done our research over the short 18 months that I've been in office, and we've come to a conclusion that the sheriff department could function as a well-oiled machine, and that's, I kind of put it like that. That's the my terminology for making it, seeing it the best that it can be. But if we had about 180 deputies, we could then make St. Louis Sheriff Department the best sheriff department in both the state and country. With that being said, I don't know if that's possible. We definitely need about 175 deputies. I've done a little research. I came across a memo that came from Judge Hagney in 2014. In 2014, Judge Hagney stated to Paul Payne, the Finance Committee, that we had to stop at 174 deputies. Otherwise, it was going to cause some critical concerns for the St. Louis Sheriff Department if we went any lower. Well, of course, since 2014, we have gone lower. Last year, my first year in office, they cut me by 5 employees. Again, this year, they've cut me a few employees. We're down to 160. We don't actually have 160 working. We have about 152 working. But with that 152, it's put us in dire straits because we have about 5 or 6, 7 actually that are off medical leave or some sort of a medical emergency. We have 4 or 5 that have called in, just called in because for whatever reasons. That hurts. And then we have about 5 or 6 that are on vacation. I guess the point I'm trying to make is with the number of deputies that I now have, whenever I have these critical things that come up, people call off, people on vacation, it puts me at a point where we have to work these guys that are at work. We have to work them some exorbitant numbers. Our CT hours, as we speak, I think we're up to about 100. We're up to about 17,000 CT hours, and that's a lot more than what we had 2 years ago. I think last year we were up to 18,000 CT hours, and I think our average had been up to last year only 11,000. So what's happening with the shortage in personnel, Brother Chairman, it's putting a real hurt on our department. Morale is down because we're working these guys. A lot of these guys are working 2 jobs, working what we call secondary, and then it's hurting their ability to do their job efficiently because they're coming to work tired, sometimes calling off. I've walked into the building and caught deputies sleeping. You can't fire them with good conscience. But when you have deputies who are working under these conditions, then it hurts their efficiency on the job. This is not a job that we can have deputies coming to work and they can't give their best, because it's at any moment it can be a dangerous job. At any moment. Of course, I believe all of you know that last year with civil unrest going on, we had several incidents that took place. We had a judge that was threatened, and we actually had to arrest a young lady in the building. We had a gang trial with two gangs, different gangs, and somebody went out, got in their car, came back with a MAC-10. And so we've had all these kind of incidents, and so I'm concerned about the safety for the public with the lack of deputies and the number of deputies that we need, and then the conditions that they're working under. I think is going to at some point cause us some critical concerns, some real concern. So I just want to ask the committee and ask the City Hall Board of Aldermen for help in getting us up to the number of deputies that we need to run this place as efficiently and as effectively as possible. The other little thing, and then I'll get out of the way. I want to thank those people that helped me get a raise for my deputies. We went from a starting salary of $27,000 now to $32,600, but that didn't affect all. It only affected about 60 of my deputies. The other 80 or so deputies are now hollering about some kind of equity in pay, and I agree with them. When I worked here as a deputy, I worked 3 years, never got a raise. I have deputies who have worked for several years, and they've gotten their step raise, but not a real equitable raise. And I know that the city is in crisis with funding and all that, but we have to do something to get these guys their pay up just a little bit. And so I'm also trying to present that to you and fight for that cause. At that point, I'll yield at this point, and if there's any questions.
Thank you, Sheriff. Appreciate it. Know you got a tough job. With the lack of funding, it makes it very difficult. And being a deputy sheriff with the low salaries, and like you said, morale's low, and which is something I could do or we could do to help out when it comes to the revenue for the sheriff department. And like you say, so they were making $27,000, they were up to $32,000. In your opinion, have you seen anyone really applying or willing to come on to the sheriff's department? Because I know with the lack of pay or the low pay, a lot of times you lose manpower and they find other jobs. So,
Brother Chairman, we have, we get a lot of applications. People want to be sheriff,
yes, sir.
deputy because of the prestige and the authority. But I've actually lost, this year I've lost 7 people. Last year I lost 21, so that's a total of 28 folks I've lost in the short 18 months that I've been in office. 9 of those folks have gone directly to the St. Louis Police Department. So I'm losing people to the police department. They're losing people St. Louis to St. Louis County, and so we have that domino effect. But the biggest thing that's hurting me is I got several friends who could retire from St. Louis County and St. Louis Police Department, but they don't want to come to work for that $32,600.
Right.
And so again, that's keeping me from hiring the better people that I know would already be post-certified and people that would really be asset to the department. So Proposition P hurt us, and we have people every day leaving. I have people retiring.
Okay.
And it's hard to replace them.
And concerning the overtime or the CT time, you're not willing to pay for overtime. Am I correct? The only thing
we're willing to, but I think there are some
budget,
some budgetary reasons, and
right.
maybe even some statute reasons. No statute, just budgetary reasons as to why we can't pay them overtime. And to the committee, Carol, that's one of the big gripes that I face as a sheriff. How come we can't get paid
Right. So so all you can do is give CT time where, if you got a little, downtime, you can give that particular deputy off with pay. That's the only way you can really pay them back.
Right.
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 All right, my last question is, how's your vehicles holding up?
Terrible. Terrible. We had 2 of them break down this week and took them to the shop, and they're done.
Okay.
So we are in need of vehicles. I don't know if you all know that I know you had the commissioner from our safety commissioner in yesterday.
Service, yes, sir.
We've been talking about helping them transport prisoners. I think they may have a contract going on with the feds, house and transport prisoners. We would love to be a part of that. I think that would be a way for the city, for us to make some money. We don't have the vehicles that we could get in on that, but we would love to be a part of that. So, we need vehicles.
How many, approximately, how many vans do you have, Sheriff?
Vehicles do we have?
Yeah, vehicles, your motor pool, your fleet.
I think my vehicle fleet, about 17, I believe.
17.
How many, Major? How many? 20. Cars and vans.
Total fleet's 20?
Right.
Okay,
Total
all right.
fleet's 20.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and ask the other members if they have any questions. Alderwoman Davis?
Good morning, Sheriff.
Good morning.
Did you have any additional information you wanted to pass out?
I did not.
I had some very specific things that I'd like to know. One of the things I do know when you're talking about your fleet is that it's quite aged
Yes, ma'am.
and it is not as up to date as we need it to be.
Yes, ma'am.
We have a different type of folk that we transport now. They believe that they are the Avengers and all of the other superheroes out here, and they try to act accordingly.
Yes, ma'am.
And so, how can we help you for the near future? There's some things that we have to do, and this is the only thing I talk about is the future. Because we know we have a budget right now that is strained.
Right.
We may not be able to do anything about it this moment, but we have to do something about it in the immediate future.
Yes, ma'am.
So, if you could give us some projected numbers or very specific information, we'd like to be able to work with that on your behalf.
Yes, ma'am.
One of the things that the chairman has spoke about, and I concur and support him in, is that this committee cannot be a committee of only 45 days out of the year of intensity. It must be a committee that works ongoing to make sure that the total infrastructure of our city is whole. So that means looking at revenue, how to increase it, and how to improve our services. So if you can provide that to us, it would really be good.
I'll get you that information. Just off the top of my head, of course, we know that we had civil unrest last year, last summer, and we participate. The St. Louis Sheriff Department actually participates in that with the St. Louis Police Department. When they talk about arresting folks, that's most of the time that's with our vehicles, because we have the large vans that can transport a lot of people at one time. Most of our vehicles now are so aged that they spend more time in the shop. And so the city is spending we spend a lot of money on repairs and getting our vehicles, where if we bought a few new ones, we could spend less money. That number, I'm sorry I don't have right at my hand because I had it in my office. The number of vehicles, we got about 10 vehicles. I mean, it seemed like every other month they're going into the shop to be repaired. So we'll get that information to you about our transportation needs. We can't go into business with our jails and all that, transporting prisoners, if we don't have, and then there's actually a fight between the St. Louis Sheriff Department and our correctional department, because corrections feel that the responsibility for transporting all prisoners is the responsibility of the Sheriff Department. And Alderman, we get calls throughout the course of the night, inmates with toothaches, headaches, or whatever, emergencies, want to go to the hospital, and the correctional facilities think that we should be transporting everybody anytime, and that too puts a strain on us by not having the vehicles nor the personnel to take care of those needs.
Okay, well, that's something else that we can talk about, because I do know that there's some other things that you all have been working on as far as the classification, training, and all of
Right.
that of your employees. And so for me, firsthand, not knowing enough about that particular situation, I would say I would prefer that you all transport them,
Yes, ma'am.
because the correctional officers are not trained appropriately.
And you
So-
are correct.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So we have to figure that out too.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so it's really important. They sent us all this paper, but the reason why we have you come in is because we get this information. It doesn't reflect in a budget, your real needs, your true needs. And so if you can provide us with additional information so that we can work with you on those issues that are really important to all of us. It's important to the judges, it's important to the citizens,
Yes.
because we don't want somebody else transporting folks, and next thing you know, they're running down Hall Street. We can't have that.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So the other thing too is, I happen to have been in a meeting where you were talking about certifying your,
Right.
have you had a chance to explain that and
Not yet,
and
not
what
yet.
that will
And
cost
then-
us?
Yeah. We did get a bill. That bill is passed. It's sitting on the governor's desk as we speak. Hopefully, he'll sign it before he leaves office tomorrow. That bill gives us the privilege to be post-certified, P-O-S-T, Peace Officer Standard Training. Every law enforcement person in the United States that I know of that carries a badge and a gun is post-certified, except for St. Louis. So we've been fighting for that point. We now have that bill on the governor's desk. We believe it's going to pass. There's been a whole lot said about the cost. We've been doing our research, digging into it. We've got a lot of people that's on our side, the National Sheriff's Association, Missouri Sheriff's Association. We believe we can get our guys trained at a cost of about $4,000 to $5,000 per deputy. Maybe even cheaper than that, because the Missouri Sheriff's Association and the National Sheriff's Association have said they will send folk to us to train our people. So we won't have to have that expense of sending them somewhere to a class and all that. Yeah, we've been working on this thing. So we can cut down on transportation costs of get them going somewhere, you know. We can get folks to come to us. And so we can get these guys trained, we believe, between $4,000 to $5,000. We're only going to do about 10 at a time. We can't send everybody at one time. So about 10 a year, which would cost us only about $40,000 to $50,000 to start getting my deputies post-certified. We don't have to do them all at one time.
Okay.
I'm just about halfway there in my post-certification. I plan to be the first person out of my group post-certified.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. I didn't realize until I was sitting, gathering that information from others, that we were not already certified.
We're the laughing stock of the state. I'm sorry.
I've heard so many concerns and discerns from folk about how they would like for you to operate, but these are important things that need to be done, and that had not been mentioned.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we're going to get past those things, and we're going to make sure that your department has the appropriate training, the appropriate vehicles, and anything else that is needed in order to provide safety, not only to our courtrooms, the people who come and sit in the courtrooms, the general public. I witnessed in a courtroom where family members got up and wanted to fight the lawyers and the
Yes.
judges.
All the time.
So these things to me are paramount,
Yes, ma'am.
and we need to make sure that we are providing those necessary dollars for that. And then the other part to that too is, as I continue to read and learn and make myself available to these various associations, it is important too that we have a great working relationship with our police department.
Yes.
Because as I understand it, all over the country, the sheriff's department is just like the National Guard to a police department.
Yes.
And we need to make sure that those processes of procedure are together as
And
well.
you're exactly right. I think by statute, if Yeah, me being the chief law enforcement person of the county, but by statute, if Chief Hayden calls on us to get involved in civil unrest, we have to. And so what I'm saying to St. Louis and to the board is that I think we need to be prepared. If there's a possibility, I don't want to put people out on the street that are not prepared to be on the street if something happens, and then there's a greater liability to the city because we're not post-certified, and that's what I've been told by lawyers across the country, that if they're not post-certified, if we run into any kind of incidents between my folk and the public and somebody gets hurt or harmed, there's going to be a greater degree of liability if they're not post-certified.
Okay, then that means we're going to be doing more than 10 a year. Thank you, sir. I'm done.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Alderman Vaccaro.
A few things.
Yes, sir.
So when you're going to get a guy post-certified in the city, why not use the city of St. Louis police? We have the training facility, and when we post-certify a police officer, it's about a 6 to 8 month process.
Yeah.
How long is your process going to take?
About the same length of time.
And
Alderman, I guess maybe because I haven't sat down with the director of public safety or the chief, and I don't see why we can't use the St. Louis Police Department either. We actually go to them for 160 hours of our training, so I don't see why that just couldn't be increased. I agree with you on that.
Okay, so I would like you to get back to me after you find that out.
Yes, sir.
The other question, have you applied for any safer grants or any of the grants that are out there since there was extra stress from the protests, and I guess I'm sure you had a fair amount of overtime or extra officers.
We have
During
not
the Great trial?
we have not applied for any grants because the point always seemed to be only way we can get the grant is that we're post-certified. And so we can't get grants without being post-certified. If we were post-certified, then we could apply for the grant. Homeland Security and other places, we have to be post-certified. And you're right, Alderman, during the civil unrest last summer, we had to go across the country to borrow equipment. We didn't have helmets, we didn't have shields. We are the largest sheriff department in the state of Missouri, and we didn't have the equipment to keep our people safe during civil unrest last summer, and so we had to go borrow big and, I want to say steal. We don't steal, but.
And all the extra security for the Great trial, how much did that cost?
We have not yet sat down and figured up a cost on that, but I can tell you this, it put a lot of stress, and I'm sure there's some costs, and we'll figure that up and get those numbers to you, but it put a lot of stress on my department because being short-staffed, we had to pull people from other jobs to provide that security, and then other work went undone. And so that's where we get back to the CT stuff. Now those guys got to get back to catching up and work CT to get that work that we didn't do while the Greiten case was going to, and there was quite a bit of work I pulled from my outside service staff, who of course, Joe, you know, does serve all the papers, and I had just about the whole group. So we lost a lot of time.
What percent, since you bring that up, what percent, excuse me, of the papers you're sending out, what percent are being returned?
Being returned?
Is
we
unfounded or not
We actually
found?
didn't go out to
I'm talking about, since you bring that up, over the year, you're giving thousands of papers to
Right.
How many are actually served and how many are returned?
I can get that information for you. I don't have that right at hand, but we serve.
That's okay, you can get it to me, we got
Okay,
time.
I'll get that information
If
to you.
If you would by Monday, Monday we're gonna do cuts and
Right.
putbacks.
But we serve. I wish I had my folks
What
that would be able
what
to tell us
percent actually gets, I mean, I hear that from
that.
attorneys
What percent in
saying.
return?
Yeah, I hear it from
I
attorneys.
would say a small percentage, 2 to 3%.
Well, give me
I'll
that
get
real
that
number.
for you, though.
Yeah, we'll look for
I'll
it
get
for
that
by
specific
Monday,
number for you. Of course, I don't.
Yeah. How much is served? I hear, attorneys complain that, gee, I gotta go get an outside process server that, getting stuff served. So I want that, I'd like that real number.
And Alderman, you're right. I hear that same complaint. I've had a couple of different outside service companies come to me and say they can do it more efficiently, more effective. And of course, Joe, you know my background. I'm from corporate life, and so outsourcing is a bad word, but it's something that we use in corporate life. I've looked into.
I'm
I've
just
looked
talking
into
about
that.
accountability, not,
Right.
you know. So give me that number.
We'll get it.
I mean,
for you.
we're sitting here and we have to think about the fire department. Yesterday said that they've taken $100,000 out of their budget to repair the oxygen apparatus they have to use when they're in a fire.
Right.
They've taken, which I'm fine with. I don't have an NSO, nor do I need one, but they've taken $800,000 out of the NSO program. You know, in some neighborhoods depend strongly on that system. I don't. I'm in a neighborhood that doesn't actually depend on that. So I understand the problems, but keep in mind, we're tasked with a huge budget issue.
Sure.
And a lot of departments, you know,
Yeah, I understand the impact that finances is having on our city, Alderman. I just think the service that we provide is so critical to the safety and to the needs of the courts and the citizens of St. Louis. I think it's something that we really need to do.
more so than keeping the firefighters safe when they
No,
go
no,
into
no,
a
no.
fire.
No,
That's
no.
what
I'm not
I'm
saying
just
that.
saying we don't have the option of just giving money. We have to take it from somewhere to give it. And we've had from the water department on down. Oh, it looks like we've got a number.
Yeah, well, they're just telling me that up to date, we've serviced over 50,000 jurors coming into the court building. And so this is, you know, I understand
But the
fire
law-
and the police, but
Right.
the sheriff has to be concerned about the sheriff department. And I want to do the best job that the citizens of St. Louis elected me to do. And so I know we got other budgetary issues.
We have massive budgetary.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm just, so you don't have any high expectations that we're gonna be able to pull this off.
I do
Because
have high
technically,
expectations.
Well, I will offer you the same thing that I've offered anybody else. Come on over, sit down, let me know what you think we should cut.
Yeah,
Because we have to cut, we can't just put money in.
yeah, I understand.
And every department, from the police department to the fire department to the water department, who's been sending out stuff, everybody says, you know, so is water safety an issue? You know, well, maybe not. Maybe we can do away with some of that. Every office has a very compelling reason why, including the sheriff's department.
Yeah.
But I'm just letting you know that.
Yeah, Joe,
It's not an easy-
being a citizen of St. Louis and having been a sheriff deputy in the past, I don't think this department has gotten its just due over the years. And so now that I've been elected as sheriff, I worked there for 3 years as a deputy. I'm going to fight for this department to be the best. I'm going to hold everybody accountable, including the sheriff. I'm here at 5:30 every day, but I'm going to fight for them to be the best and get the best. I want to get my people paid equitably and all of that good stuff, Joe. So
So does the water department. So does the fire department.
I hope the
so
chief of
does-
police and all those guys fight for their department.
Right. Well, anyway,
I'm fighting for
I'm
mine.
just letting you know that.
I know.
You know, if it doesn't happen, it isn't because we don't do. It's
I
got more to
understand.
do with it. This is probably the toughest budget year, and I've been doing this for 11 years. And in 11 years, unless we go back and make everybody, including deputies and everybody else, take furloughs like they did 8-9 years ago, they had every employee had to take a week furlough without pay and
Bless you.
the.
Yeah, we've had tougher budgets. This was tough. Well, we've had tougher budgets. I don't think you were here at that time, Alderman. But
I
this
was
is our
here for
job.
the-
As Aldermen, it's something we have to try to do.
I was here for
You know.
the furloughs,
You know,
and I'm just saying. I mean,
what I'm
I'm
just
just
saying,
trying-
we've had tighter budgets than this. This is not a good one, but we've had worse. That's all I'm saying.
okay. Well, all I can say is that
Okay.
I'm just trying to be real and let you know that the issues that we're tasked with having to take away from some groups
Sure.
to give to some groups, and it's just not. You know, it's going to be.
And that's fine. But do you have any more questions of the sheriff? We understand the background of the budget. Okay, thank you, Alderman. We appreciate your questions. Alderwoman Howard.
Good morning, Sheriff.
Good morning.
How many positions are you down? Did you say?
Yeah, we're allotted this year 160. I actually have working about 154 today. So we would look at, and with us being at 160, and that having been cut from last year from 165 down to 160, I'm at the bare bones. Carol, and so when we have people call off, people sick, it kills me.
What would be a full force?
What would be a full, I can function, if I got 175 employees, I could make this work like clockwork, the sheriff department. And I had a little memo here that I mentioned earlier by Judge Hagney was saying in 2014 that we needed 174 deputies to make that place run like it should. If I was somewhere in that ballpark, 174, 175, you wouldn't hear from me as far as personnel.
Again, I'm not going to give you any false hope here.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
don't think
I
that's going to
understand.
happen.
I
But I
understand.
just wanted to, for
Yes,
my
ma'am.
own information here. Also, on your vehicles, they're in the vehicle pool of the city of St. Louis. Have you requested any upgrades or anything on this bond issue that's coming up in August?
Yes, we have, and I think we may be getting something out of that pool of cars that they may have for us coming up with the bond issue,
Okay.
and that's in December, right? When is that?
August.
August.
Okay, and then one more thing. I notice your department brings in about $1 million. Do you get fees from the process serving that you do? Do you
Yes.
collect fees on those?
Yes. Yes, we get fees.
On the process serving?
It goes where, Tim? Goes to the city.
Oh, it goes into the general revenue.
Yes.
Okay. But you collect fees on doing garnishments?
Say that again. Stand here.
Okay. Do you collect fees on serving people, process serving?
Money is collected.
Uh-huh.
That-
You need to get to the microphone.
The money is collected.
Yes.
Once we get that money, it's $20, or I think it is $20 goes to the St. Louis, not the St. Louis, the Missouri Sheriff's Association,
Okay.
okay? And then the rest will go back to the city
Okay.
general revenue.
What does the Sheriff's Association do with the $20?
It's their supplemental fund, and what that does, a lot of it will help pay discrepancies around the state of Missouri. For instance, if the average pay is, say, $32,000
Okay.
around the state, they will help supplement that, and also goes to a pension fund.
So if there's a municipality that's paying $31,500, they'll supplement the $500?
Yeah.
Do we get any of that supplement?
We did.
Okay.
We did before we raised that starting salary from 27 to 32.6. Now we're knocked out of that,
You're,
and they're real
You're
happy
meeting
about that. Jeff.
the minimum pay. Okay. Okay. I was just wondering, I'm looking at your revenue and if there's any way that you could derive more revenue on your own. I don't know. And have you thought of that?
Yes, we have, and we've asked the judges. I think we have to go through them. Steve, is that right? We have to ask the judges to give us permission to raise our fees. We asked Judge Mullins, our presiding judge. We asked him about a month ago, and he hasn't gotten back to me. And I don't get a lot of cooperation from the judges when it comes to the financing.
Okay. Well, I think maybe you need to work on getting some cooperation because this city doesn't have money to give you right now. And I'm just thinking maybe the sheriff's department needs to get a little more creative about how they can bring in their own stream of revenue. Just my thoughts.
Alderman, also I want to add, once this bill that just passed up in the legislature, it will recognize us as a law enforcement agency. Once it's signed, then we have to go and complete an ORI through the Missouri Highway Patrol.
Or ORI?
It's kind of like a social security number for a law enforcement agency.
Oh, okay.
I'll just put it that way. It's-
Okay, sort of like your tax ID.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So once we get that ORI, then it goes to the feds. They have to approve it, and then, once they approve it, then we're able to go and get grant money.
Okay.
See, right now, by not being recognized as a law enforcement agency, we're prohibited from getting grants. Also, with that supplemental fund, there's money there for continuing education.
Which would get your certification?
Well, it's for continuing education.
Oh, okay, so you have to get the initial certification before you
Then
continue
we're-
it.
Then
Okay.
we're entitled for that money. But the problem is, we're not post-certified, we're not considered a law enforcement agency, so everything ran kind of across with that one bill. And that will solve some of the problems that we're talking about, but I should say will address some of the problems. But then we still have the problems of vehicles and stuff that, we may be able to get grant money through that, and everything's relative,
Okay. But I am pleased to know that you are working on a plan
Yes, ma'am.
and you are bringing the department forward and upward. So, I mean, I wish that we could find some money for you, but I don't see that happening. But I appreciate your ingenuity and your creativity and then your professionalism in bringing the department up to standard,
One of the, and
which
I.
may open some
yeah.
doors for you.
If I'm given the privilege to run that department like I know we can run it, we'll find, I got some smart people working with me and we'll find money to do a lot of stuff that we want to do, and we won't put that pressure on the city of St. Louis. I'll give you one example. I couldn't get the state to audit the sheriff's department, but I did get the city to audit my land tax department. So we audited the land tax department. We found a statute where all of that money we collected from selling our delinquent land tax, and it went right back to the city. But there's a little ordinance that said that the sheriff should get a certain amount of money, and so
To transfer those titles, and we're working on that ordinance, yeah.
Right, and so we'll take advantage of that.
Okay.
We'll dig and we'll find it.
And that's what, as a city, we need to do. We need to find sources of revenue besides taxing our people here. So,
I agree.
okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
All right, thank you, Alderwoman. Alderwoman Murphy.
Good morning, Sheriff.
Good morning.
I really don't have any questions. My colleagues, I think, asked and you answered most of my concerns. I said I, too, would like to see the department utilized to its fullest. So I hope that post-certification comes through.
Yes, ma'am.
And then, of course, paid appropriately. So I think that's about it. I concur with what the aldermen have said here, and I wish I could do more. You know my heart is with you.
Yes, ma'am, I do. Thank you so much.
And we will do whatever we can.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Alderman Muhammad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sheriff, how are you?
Alderman?
Well, you need more money, and as I look through this annual operating plan, I see monies that the city is allocating to programs and city services that are completely useless, in my opinion. And I think that money will be better served under a department who needs it and who is also operating efficiently. I think that you are doing a great job as sheriff. One thing that I think is important to note is when we passed Proposition P just a few months ago, the Sheriff's Department was the only law enforcement agency who did not receive any monies allocated from that proposition. And I think that's something that we have to rectify and change. While we did give your deputies, they did receive roughly a $4,000 to $5,000 pay raise. They still living below the poverty line, and you still have an underfunded department. And I think that's what we have to change. So I yield to the chairman, and I will hope that if there's anything that I can do or that the committee can do to find monies to allocate to the sheriffs, I think that we should do it, especially when you have a sheriff that is operating effectively and efficiently. And from what I can tell from historical records from the past 30 years, we didn't have that before Sheriff Betts. So I thank you for your service to this city, and you are doing a hell of a job, in my opinion.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Alderman. Monday, yeah, we'll be making our cuts. I think we're going to meet Monday at 10 a.m. the Board of Aldermen and the Ways and Means Committee. So that's when we'll be trying to make our cuts and then those transfers for certain city departments. I just want to understand, once we do that, we send that over to the Board of E&A. The Board of E&A reviews that. Once they review it, they send it back to us. Then whatever they send back to us, we make other adjustments, then we send it back to them. They look at it, then they send it back to us. And on that third round, fourth round, it's pretty much what it's going to be. So it's a process we have to go through. That's why we're running through the budget. We only have approximately 3 weeks. It has to be first, second, third read, and go up for perfection. So we're on a tight schedule when it comes to time. As you know, the City of St. Louis budget has to be passed by June 30th or before July 1. So it's very important. It's been running gun, so starting next week, we'll go hard in the paint, as they say in basketball, so we try to get this budget done.
Brother Alderman,
Yes,
if
sir.
I can just say, and
Sure.
I'll go to my seat, I'm a citizen first.
Yes, sir.
Born and raised in St. Louis, 65 years. Love this city. Always lived in this city. I understand the needs of this city.
Yes, sir.
I have a degree education and a degree in criminal justice, and I know business. 26 years at Ameren, so I know the needs of the city, and I'm with you all, 500%. I can live with whatever you all do.
Yes, sir.
If you don't give me anything, great, we can live with it. But if you cut me, it's going to be like cutting my jugular, and I'll have to try to live with that. But
Well, I don't see that happening.
well,
You
we'll
know,
do our best.
We,
So I think the
we do a
committee-
good job of cutting, but we don't add too well. But I don't think we will cut you. You're doing a heck of a job, just like the Alderman of the 21st has stated, and you got a tough job.
Thank you,
And
sir.
all you men and women have tough jobs. So, hey, tight budget. Keep up the good work. We really appreciate what you're doing with the Sheriff Department. Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming, Sheriff. Appreciate it. Okay, well, guess we'll move right along. We have the Circuit Attorney in our presence, and we're going to ask her to come up and start our presentation. Good morning, Circuit Attorney. I'm sure you have your staff members too. Just the floor is yours. You can open it up with your presentation. Thank you for your presence.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the Ways and Means Committee. I'm accompanied by Mr. Chris Hinckley, my Chief Warrant Officer, as well as Mr. Michael Warwick, the Chief of Staff, and they'll probably answer some specific questions if asked.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for providing me with an opportunity to present the Circuit Attorney's FY19 budget concerns before you today. We have implemented changes that will improve and enhance the city's criminal justice system by making the CAO more efficient while providing our prosecutors with more time to focus on serious and violent criminals while implementing methods to hold them accountable. The process requires the replacement and hiring of skilled attorneys to prosecute violent felons and that threaten the safety of our city. By upgrading our case management system and purchasing new information technology systems, the CAO has moved closer to an automated paperless system. That will result in long-term organizational efficiencies and cost savings. In addition, we have partnered with law enforcement to improve our processes in our warrant office, including modifying charging recommendation process to find ways to provide our prosecutorial services in a fair, efficient, and more effective manner. The two key issues affecting our budget are the Proposition P funding and the diversion program. The CAO primary goal with Prop P monies is to provide salary adjustments up to 11% to members of our staff, allowing us to retain and recruit a strong and competent staff of attorneys and professionals to prosecute the violent felonies in our city of St. Louis. The placement of the diversion program on Prop pre-funding greatly reduces our opportunity to provide the needed salary adjustments for our staff. It's imperative that the diversion program is treated as a standing program within the CAO general funding mechanism. The CAO must have these salary adjustments to prevent our current staff from leaving and to allow sufficient salary increases to recruit and hire new attorneys. I thank you for the opportunity to discuss the CAO budget. We have made significant strides in improving our computer infrastructure and moving towards an automated paperless system. I'm open to any questions.
Thank you. Just have a few. My understanding is you can only pay your attorneys $40,000 a year.
That's starting salary.
That's starting salary, and I know the other municipalities, pay at least starting at 60.
Yes, it is.
And I just want to commend you. You got a tough job. Anytime the salary is that low, it's hard to retain, your staffing. And I know that's been a problem for you, and which was something we can do to implement you and help you out on that. The other thing, if you elaborate on your diversion program, I know you received a $390,000 grant last year, and I think the diversion program has been very helpful. And if you can kind of explain to us how that helps and clear up the docket in dealing with criminals, and it moves your caseload a lot easier if you had that in place.
Well, basically, and thank you guys. You were part of the process of allowing us to have a supplemental budget for our diversion program. And basically what is going on, we had a small grant that is about to run out soon. So we wanted to establish an infrastructure for diversion because diversion saves everybody money. It saves money on holding people in the jails. It saves money for people being rearrested over and over again and being held. And we all know about how much we get paid a day for people being held. But what we are doing in diversion is more different than you hear the word diversion. It's about really allowing us, with our limited resources, to focus our time and energy on the more serious cases, while looking at the more nonviolent cases that can be handled in a different manner in terms of some individuals are allowed to one, go out into the community and do a lot of community programs. At the same time, we do a risk assessment. So not only are we just making a snap decision, we're doing a risk assessment to, one, identify whether this person is more likely to reoffend or go further in the criminal justice system, but at the same time, bring in-house services under the prosecutor arm, because what we found is we need people to get jobs right away, mental health services right away, cognitive behavior training right away, trauma-informed counseling right away. And if we are constantly referring people out, one of the things we find that more people, because of lack of transportation, resources, situations, they cannot attend these different things, which feeds into the prison pipeline of what we see people being held on probation violations. So as the prosecutor, we have what's called prosecutor-led diversions, where we identify low-level nonviolent offenders. We're able to make sure they're not being dealt with in probation and parole. Once they finish our program, the case is dismissed, but they're nonviolent. That means they're less likely to go into the system to reoffend. More people that are being held in our justice center and our workhouse are probation violators. So we are addressing that by trying to take groups of people or individuals where you don't have to deal with people being held on probation violations and address their substance abuse, address their mental health issues. And we work with the courts, and the courts have been instrumental in creating a docket for our diversion programs. But the problem is we have to grow this, because eventually, if we don't have the infrastructure in place, we can no longer do these things. And the courts is willing to help us move more cases on diversion, so more people are, one, given alternatives type of settings, as well as be more successful, and we're not dealing with them being held. So that's kind of our diversion program, and we've grown our diversion program to over 150 people in a year and a half. At first, it was only 30 people in the diversion program. So we're constantly growing, and we want more, but we need the infrastructure in place.
Right, thank you. I think it's an excellent idea. You're thinking out the box, and it's a new, fresh approach that's I think is very helpful when it comes to moving the docket along and dealing with those crimes, those offenders, and to kind of clear the docket. And it doesn't keep your staff tied up in court or waiting on those trial dates by having that diversion program. I think that's an excellent idea. Okay, I guess we'll just go ahead and ask a few more questions from the other members. Alderwoman Davis.
Thank you. Hi, how you doing? First, I want to say to you, before I ask you some budgetary questions, you've been through a lot the last few months of this year, and I hope that last night, the response that you got from your community gave you some strength to move forward. So I just wanted to say that to you. You need to know how people feel, and you saw that. And so as we all move forward in what we do every day, it is difficult decisions that must be made. Sometimes we make mistakes. Sometimes we don't have all the tools we need. But whatever that is, we're still standing, we're still moving, we still have good intentions, and we're trying to do the best we can do. And so your community showed you that last night,
Yes,
and I
ma'am.
hope you understood that.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'm extremely excited about the diversion program because it does make a difference. But I wanted to ask you, budgetary-wise, and also in the actual implementation of the project, how is the state working with you on this?
Well, the state in terms of, you mean,
So, state probation and parole,
Oh.
they should have a strong role in this, because if the probation officer is not on board, then that's going to present a problem to you to try to implement this. And I only say that because I've had to go to court with a couple people. I had to write some letters because I understand probation officers, their caseloads are ridiculous. And if I can move one out every day for this reason, I'm going to do that. And that's what happens. And so then we have to go in and try to resolve this situation and not have them into our system again, causing us a lot of money. And a lot of times, these people have jobs that they're going to every day. They have families that they're taking care of. And just because of a minor situation, you want to revoke them, that's not common sense anymore. So I was just wondering, are they working with you on this?
yes, that's a very good question, Alderman. Actually, probation and parole has been a great partner.
Okay.
Of course, we can do more. Right now, in our program, we only have about 2 probation officers dedicated to this work. We want to expand that. And what we're trying to measure, working with probation and parole, it's kind of, when you talk about change, you're changing their role also, because their role is, like you said, is to hold people accountable in case management, but not to penalize people for issues that we have to address. And so we do work together as a team. It's a novel approach where we're taking probation and parole a little bit more out of the equation, because that's what we want to get away from. Because we don't even want to have these individuals under probation and parole. We need their assistance, but not to the same level like you're talking about with if individuals violate for one, not passing a drug test one time, then they're basically locked
Or
up.
even for a verbal comment.
A verbal, there's many different things. They have many different violations, but we're working with probation and parole to have a robust dialogue, as well as support each other in making the best individual decision for that individual. So our diversion is not like everybody gets the same thing. We're very individualized to that individual's needs, because we have a risk assessment as well as a need assessment of that individual. And that takes time and that takes resources. So we are working well with probation and parole to get away from the traditional things that you hear and see that cause people to go into a cycle they can't get back out of.
Okay, so the other thing I wanted to ask you about your budget is, you do have some opportunities coming in the next 6 months or so with Prop P passing and all of that, but I did hear some comments that maybe there's still some additional things that you may need in your budget, and so I want you to explain that to us.
Well, we just wanted to make sure, I know that everyone is asking for money and need resources, so I understand that we all have constraints. But we're just making the push that we do need the diversion money so we can, one, attract more grants. We can build this infrastructure that we need to take. I mean, if you think about it, we've identified that more than 30% of our docket is really low-level nonviolent offenders. And so you think about a docket that we need to expand for so we can move them in another way, in a just way, not sacrificing public safety. We need an infrastructure that we can grow. And with that is the cost, because we are gonna have, if we were able to move these cases, we save the city millions. So it's a cost savings, but we're just trying to advocate, and we understand that, things, we have restrictions and money is tight, but we just want to advocate for our diversion program being sustained on the regular budget, like it was in the 1010 fund, like it was with the supplemental. So we're asking for that, but we understand that, if we can't, we're gonna try to push for it later on. But we wanna have that diversion money. That's a normal allocation, not use Prop P money for that diversion program. Because I think what that's doing is basically saying that we have to pick and choose to give salary increases, which Prop P was actually designed for law enforcement. Because, you think about, people talk about turnover. In our office, we try more cases than any other jurisdiction around this country, the state. 115 jurisdictions, we try more trials. You look at St. Charles, their starting salary is like close to $70,000. Yeah. They see maybe 3 trials a year. We see over 139 trials. So when you think about that, we have more cases, we go to trial more. When you have 40,000 starting salary and somebody can start off at 60, 70,000, where do you think they're gonna go? They're gonna find other opportunities, and once they get the experience of trial, then they can be snatched up by a private firm making 6 figures. So we have to compete with that. We're not asking for prosecutors to have this 6-figure salary. We're just asking for us to be able to compete with the other jurisdictions. So we just wanted to highlight the need to fund the diversion program in the budget.
Okay. One of the other things that, when we talk about our budget now, is that in the past, all these departments have operated in silos. Any funds that are out here, whether it's through the federal government, whether it's through foundations or anything, they want to see partnerships. And so we're going to have to come out of that mode. And I think that's going to be part of the responsibility for this committee as well. We have to look at revenue, and we'll have to find new ways to get the revenue here into the city budget. And so I wanted to ask you, are you looking at other ways to partner with different departments that affect what you do?
Well, we're always looking for new ways. We talk to the courts, we say, look, help us out. But of course, people, other organizations and other entities in the city, they have their priorities also. So we're trying to, one, make sure we partner with people, but we have to understand that they have things that they need internal to their structure. So we want to partner with people, and we will reach out to other organizations within the city. But, like all of us, we're strapped for cash, and we're trying to fund the things that we need to fund. But I look forward to talking to any other entity that wants to join with me to help support diversion. So that is an option also.
Yeah, that's going to have to be a way that we change the way we do business here. Anybody's priority is definitely the priority of the city as a whole.
Yes.
And so, and we have that problem with a lot of budgets, that people have decided that that's their money.
Yes.
It's not your money. It belongs to the city of St. Louis and the citizens and the requirements that are there for us to operate in the city.
Yes.
And so hopefully we'll have opportunities for us to bring some of you all together.
Yes.
And talk about possibilities to search for additional funds.
I'm willing to work with anybody who wants to strengthen diversion. I think that many of the organizations within the city structure, we know the need for diversion, and I think that that's a conversation that many people talk about, bail bond reform, which we are, looking to address those issues, as well as some of the issues we hear about the workhouse and different things. We are a willing participant and partner with anyone to address these concerns and to work together so we can, one, save the city money, but at the same time, pool our resources so we can be more efficient and effective, but not, basically affecting our own day-to-day operations of our organization.
Well, you do know we have no additional funds to give you.
What?
But we can talk. But one of the things that
That's not what you told me, no.
Yeah, no. But what I wanted to say to you is, it's really about moving forward. And I'm hoping that everybody is getting the message that we need to do things different, and that we are a committee, and I love my chairman because he listens. I love my chairman. He's got great ideas for us to move forward, because we do have to do things different. And we have to focus on revenue now, how to bring the money in.
And just to say something about that, just to talk about the diversion program, what's so wonderful about it. See, a lot of times people don't hear about the inner workings that we partner with, like Slate. Slate has agreed to put a actual Slate office within our office. That's never been done before. And that's not just for the circuit attorney participants, but that is also a resource that can use for individuals who are coming in the court system. One of the big things that we face is people need jobs, but they need access to jobs. And we find people, they have to go, get a bus to come to court. Then they got to get a bus to go see the probation officer. Then they got to go here to go to the drug treatment place. And so we're trying to bring a lot of this stuff in-house because, as you know, crime is a public health crisis.
It is.
And we're trying to bring a lot of those things within our organization. We also worked out having mental health services, a small MOU with, by the grace of God, Myrtle Hilliard is trying to do a pilot with us free of charge. But do you know how much mental health costs for one individual? And we have people who are affected with trauma. And we're not just talking about diversion participants, we're even using that for witnesses and victims, because sometimes even the victim services funding that we get from the state is not enough to even cover everybody. So we're trying to piece together this infrastructure that is like an emergency room, because we see everything. We see hopelessness. You were in the Better Family on Life seminar and rally about gun violence, but we're talking about hopelessness. I mean, that's what you see. You see an intersection of people not having jobs, people not having education, people not having hope. And what's the more scariest thing? They're younger and younger. And we have a diversion program, which is number one, well, basically, we're one of the only ones in the country doing this. We're taking the 17 and 25-year-olds. Those are the more riskier individuals. And we're trying to give them hope, because those are the shooters. Those are the people that eventually going to work on us in our houses, in our homes, in our cars, if we don't catch them early. These are the medium risk individuals, and we're one of a kind diversion program of youthful offenders. And I want all of you guys to come to one of our introduction sessions to see and hear these young people that said and it's amazing that the prosecutor is helping them. I mean, that's a novel idea. My job is to put people in the system, but I'm trying to take people and put them out to make them productive citizens so we can focus on the more violent individuals. And so I know people talk about what is diversion, but diversion saves money over time. We have statistics from other jurisdictions that do this. I mean, they save millions if we are able to have a start.
Well, Chairman, I'm done, but one of the things that I'm going to continue to say is this: we have been neglecting our needs, but the most important thing is we have to be more creative in getting revenue to our city, and that's our job. That is our job.
I agree with you, Alderwoman. Great questions, and couldn't see it any better. That's something we need to do, is find more revenue, and I think that diversion program is excellent. It's very well needed to really help a lot of the youth in our community. It really is. Okay, Alderwoman Howard. For Carol. I'm sorry. I tried to skip you, Joe, but it didn't work. Alderman. Yes, Alderman Carol. Didn't mean to do it on purpose. Go ahead, Joe.
So, the questions that I keep getting asked from people in my neighborhood, the gripe, how much money was literally wasted from what people in my neighborhood, because now we've said we have a case now, it didn't, and now we've let it go. what was the dollar amount? How much did we spend on special prosecutors and everything like that?
Well, I don't feel like we wasted our money, but we only spent to date $64,000. And if you look at what the governor said, he spent over $1 million. So to spend $64,000, when you're dealing with high-powered lawyers that he had 6 at a time, and what we've done is I made sure, because I knew of the type of case this would be, I kept everyday staff off of this case. It was dealt with the executive staff members, myself, Chief Durker, Mr. Steele. So we dealt with the case. No one else touched the case. The everyday running of the office was moving efficiently and effectively. And but to date, we spent $65,000 on this case.
I wouldn't mind seeing the accounting on that. I really would like it. And
Yes.
I would beg to differ on a couple things. We, as a neighborhood, go to bond hearings, and we also go to sentencing hearings. Your victim advocacy person, we gave him money midway through the year, which I still wouldn't mind finding out where most of that went to, but we gave $400,000. But on a personal note, we go to these trials. Your victim advocate person called the victim at 7:30 in the morning the day of a trial and asked, do you still want to go? We're just going to do a plea bargain. Well, we go as a neighborhood, so we went. We get there at 9 like we're supposed to. Your victim person, and I'm sure she reported back to you that I was mean, she shows up at about 9:45 for a 9 o'clock, says, well, is there anything I can do? I said, yeah, show up on time. So we're in front of Judge Mark Neal. Everything else is done. We're sitting around, now we're waiting for the prosecutor, who says, gee, you know what? I'm overworked, and I'm here. And here's a guy that has, on parole for less than 6 weeks, 21 counts of burglary in our neighborhood with a gun. And the best you can do was 12 months drug treatment? You know, I'm extremely disappointed. I mean, he shows up late, my neighborhood's on time, he shows up with an attitude at 11 o'clock.
Well, first of all, that's unacceptable in terms of showing up with an attitude, and I would like to get that information from you.
I would be more than happy
But,
to do that on
But
both
that is
cases.
unacceptable.
And-
But to understand in terms of, I'm not going to make excuses for individuals, and I want to get that individual case or 2 cases, whatever you're saying, but you have to also look at sometimes, and I'm not going to make excuses, defense attorneys say we're setting out for a plea on the same day. So we sometimes have to, when the judge tells us, and I'm not saying that happened in that individual situation because I don't know that individual situation, but I'm telling you sometimes the judges will say it's a plea sent out and we're scrambling to get there because sometimes the attorney's in another division at the same time, they say send it out for a plea. But that is not an excuse, and I want to get those 2 cases and I will address that.
And again, 21 counts with a gun on parole, and the best you could do. You know, and I hear you talk about the salaries of the different prosecutors. The prosecutor before seemed to be able to retain a lot of really high-quality prosecutors, and there wasn't all. She was working under the same circumstances you're working under. I sit here and I hear a lot of excuses. I hear all the good hype talk that this is what we're doing. There's people sitting in our jail. I know that Elliot did a story on it, and of course I've seen Lauren's stories too, where people are sitting in the jail, and I've done board
But they're
bills on
sitting in
this.
the jail because judges are the ones that set bond. So judges are the ones that hold people in jail.
Well, if we're trying them, though, they're moving them through the system.
But that's also, the
We should
courts
be-
control the docket. I don't control the docket, so just.
We should be trying to spin these things, get these people out. I don't know.
There's no excuses, and one thing I want to address is, I'm not going to say there's not high-quality people in my organization also. There's turnover because of change. You know, you have to look at, there's different administrations, and even under Jennifer Joyce, she had turnover. So I'm not going to say that turnover would probably happen in a larger scale when I came in, but I'm not going to say that turnover did not happen in Jennifer Joyce, and every circuit attorney even under Jennifer Joyce, had turnover.
Well, so the guy that you hired, wouldn't we have had somebody on staff that could have handled the Brighton stuff? And then the guy that you hired, I know you said it's 64,000. When I listen to the news, they say this guy was 100 and something thousand.
Well, you listen to the news, and the defense attorney was asked what I spent on my case. I think that's not great reporting, because how can a defense attorney on the other side tell anybody what my
but if
internal office spent?
How much was it, the the guy that you hired to try this? My understanding was over $100,000.
That's not true.
What was the cost?
There was no special prosecutor. We handled the case.
The guy that was there, the guy that you hired.
Yeah, you're speaking of the investigator, I believe.
Yeah, the
is what
investigator, I'm
not
using the
prosecutor.
wrong term, but the special investigator.
The investigator was about, I got to get those numbers of what we spent.
So is he still on your payroll?
No, of course not. The case is over with. We paid the investigator about $6,500.
I would like to see all this in writing. I
Okay.
really would. You know, like again, I probably should, rather than air all my grievances here in public, we need to talk. But I have a lot of things that I'm really disappointed in. And again, it's when we go to court.
Well, it sounds like you're disappointed in the case. Is that correct?
Oh, not that, just that case. If you
But
remember,
you're
I
focusing
talked
on that
about.
case. You're focusing on how much I spent on Grayton's.
Well, I'd like to know
Well,
because
did you
it's
ask how
a
much we
money.
spent on Reginald Clemens' case? That's been happening for over 20, 30 years?
No, I'd like the
I
Grayton
mean,
case
do we
was.
talk about that specific case?
The
So
Grayton
what is the
case has
Grayton's
been in-
case?
the
Any
Grayton
different
case-
from any other case?
So we'll go back to the one in my
Secretary
neighborhood.
Attorney, how much was that? The original.
We don't even have the numbers, because that's been going on before I was little.
Yeah,
So we'll go
probably
back.
200, 300,000, I would imagine, or more, okay.
Well, we can even go back. On the
But
Grayton
let's
case.
stick to the facts only, not trying to
Well,
beat
this
up
is the
on you.
questions that I
Okay.
am asking.
All right, let's keep it.
The
keep it
questions that I would
budget.
ask. These are budget
Okay,
questions.
all right.
These are budget questions. When I want to know what the real numbers were. Of course, I hear the same thing people hear on the news, and you're telling me you did all this for like $65,000. And that,
I'm giving you to date, that's what we spent on the Grayton's case, $64,000, excuse me.
then the other had to do with, like I said, the prosecutor and the victim advocate person that both showed up extremely late. Now, you tell me that, okay, well, the courts may have had your guy in two different places. Why would a victim advocacy person call somebody at 7 o'clock that morning on the day of a sentencing hearing, ask, well, do you really want to go, and then show up late? Was she scheduled in multiple places?
Well, they could have been, but I'm not going to justify that behavior. So I want to get those individual cases so I can tell you what happened, but it's no excuse. I'm not going to say that's excuse, and if you told me that, then I will address that.
I'll get you the names.
All right, thank you, Alderman. Alderwoman Howard.
Good morning, Ms. Garner.
Good morning.
I admire your diversion program. However, I would like some statistics on that. Have you gathered data? You said 150 offenders you've moved into the diversion program.
Yes.
Do we follow them to determine whether or not
They're successful.
they're well? Success is if they do not come across you again.
Yes.
And are we getting them help? I mean, you mentioned all the lack that with this program that, you move them here and you move them there, but many times they don't follow up. Are we following them? As the Alderwoman from the 19th said, is the state working with you on the probation and parole? Are they working with you?
Yes, ma'am. I don't want to be clear. They are working with us, and we have people who are reporting to probation and parole, but it's in a different capacity. They're actually being monitored with, their follow-ups, their mental health counseling, anything community service, but we also, internal, we take a piece of that. So we're actually doing case management also. So it's kind of the probation piece as well as our office piece, where we're following these individuals to make sure they have jobs, make sure they're paying back restitution. In our diversion programs, you cannot have more than $3,000 worth of restitution owed in a case. So we limit that because we want to make sure people are successful and they actually pay. We make them go to, they do over 100 hours of community service as well as cognitive behavior training, trauma-informed counseling. So we bring a lot of that in-house, and what I was giving an example of Myrtle Hilliard, we work with WashU, we work with other partners that are willing to provide those services for us.
That's admirable, and I commend you for that. And I would like any data you could provide
Yes,
this committee for
And I can
that,
get that to you.
and possibly if you have the information, the cost savings this provides for the city.
Okay, write that down.
Okay, now, the other question I have is how many prosecutors are you down at this point?
We're down 7
You're down 7. Okay.
prosecutors.
In looking at our city and our income, we're down on our tax revenue and on our taxable income. And I suspect, I don't have hard data, but I suspect much of this is due to the press of the violent crime that we're suffering. Now, I understand we cannot arrest our way out of this, but at the same time, we cannot allow this to continue, and we need a prosecutorial action to help eliminate this. What are you doing to address this? Because, you know, we can sit here and talk about lack, but we need partnership, we need you to work with law enforcement, we need all of this. And I admire this diversion program, and I'd like to see the statistics, but I think we need a plan on how we're addressing the violent crime and what we're doing to get these people off the streets.
Well, when I talk about diversion, it's not saying we're not focusing on violent crime. That's allowing us to focus our resources on violent crime. That's when I talk about diversion, these are not the everyday prosecutors that you see inside the courts going to trial. These are separate prosecutors that are focused on diversion. That's one piece. But that allows, if we can streamline our caseload for an individual prosecutor, which is the average is like 200 cases per person. We can streamline those if we took half of those cases where they can focus on the more violent individuals, that they can work to address violence by holding people accountable, by focusing their time on these more serious cases, and that's what we're working to do. But we are working with law enforcement. We work well with the ICU, Intervention and Compliance Unit. It's a gang unit. We work well with the FBI, where we're addressing how we look at violent criminals and how we work to identify those individuals and how we work as partnerships, whether we may send those individuals to the feds that you don't hear about, as well as we work with police in terms of the homicides and the different special victim crimes. We work well with law enforcement, so we're working hard. But of course, as you know, we're all overworked. We have a lot of murders that are happening, but we can do a better job. And I think that if we strengthen the prosecutor piece, while we can attract more prosecutors with experience, because that's what we need to address the violent crime. And with the prosecutorial team, we have to have more resources and money. Like, that's why the Prop P is good, because we can get that more experienced 10 to 15-year prosecutor to come into the office.
So do you anticipate with the Prop P money that you might gain, that you'll be able to raise salaries and attract more prosecutors?
Yes, I will be. And we're working to do that.
I would hope so, because I think this city is really, we're suffering. Every department we have before us, we have no more money to give anyone. And we need to solve this, because our revenue is dependent upon people coming in here and spending money, and they're not going to do it as long as they feel threatened by violent crime.
And we're really, it's like you said, we're using our resources in terms of our crime strategies unit, which those are individuals that work with law enforcement to address the violent criminals. And it takes a longer time to put those cases together, but we do a lot of different things that you may not hear about. They're not put out in the media, but we are working with law enforcement to address the more violent criminals. We're looking at technology. We upgraded our investigatory infrastructure. We have a new chief investigator. He is an FBI agent, Mr. Tony Bach. So he's bringing in that investigative capacity to help support law enforcement so we can start helping with them put these cases together to address the crime drivers. We're always at CompStat. We're always looking at from the warrant office to address how we identify the violent criminals, because that's what we have to do. We have to identify the crime drivers so we can address those from arresting as well as prosecution. And we're really bringing in Chief Durker, who has a long relationship with the bench. I think when we talk about some of the disparities and why someone was sentenced to this versus this, when you have that relationship with the bench, then that's when we can flag these individuals. We can advocate a position to the bench so we can hold those more serious individuals accountable. And I think that we're putting those pieces together so you'll see, that reflecting in the violence. And I think that we're
To
doing
be
a good
clear,
job.
when you say hold them accountable, these people that are found guilty of violent crime, you're talking about locking them up and arresting them and putting them in prison, I take it?
Yes, ma'am, because, some of the issues, and I'm not going to point blame to the bench, but we all know we make recommendations and they're cut. I mean, that's a job of the bench. They make a decision. We make a recommendation, the defense attorney will make a recommendation, and the judge gets to decide. But we want to hold individuals accountable. We want to send the more violent people away. We're not giving people breaks, so people may think we're asking for high sentence, high recommendations, but it's up to the judges to make that final call. I'm not going to say they're not doing their job, but I think that we have to build that rapport and relationship, and I think we can, because there's a new bench that we need to hold those individuals accountable, and we have to have higher
And
recommendations.
I think we need to hold our judges accountable too, and maybe we can get some of that information.
Yes.
So, because they're serving at the people's will also.
Yes.
So, thank you very much, and I would like to have some of those statistics on your diversion program,
And
if
we
at
will
all
get those to
possible.
you.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Okay, Alderwoman Murphy.
Good morning, Ms. Gardner. You said the diversion grant will run out.
Yes.
So when?
September.
September, okay. And how much was the grant for originally?
Well, it was originally, I don't have those. Do we have those
I'm,
numbers? We can get those numbers to
That's all
you,
right. That's all right.
but
Just-
it was about the amount that you guys helped fund for the supplemental, so we were just
Okay.
trying to keep that infrastructure in place, because when that runs out, we have nothing.
Okay.
And as you know, the federal grants run out. It's been hard to
Right.
bring those federal dollars into
Back,
our
yeah.
state.
Yeah. When someone enters your office, they enter as an attorney one?
Yes,
I
ma'am.
take it, okay. So is there anybody actually in your office making just $40,000 a year?
Many people.
Many people?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but what is an attorney manager?
Attorney manager
I see it on the
is
line.
more there's a more experienced attorney that's over a group. So they're like a team leader. So that's where you're over a group of prosecutors, and usually those are the 5, 7, really the 10-year attorneys. But because we looked at the structure previously, and we want to make more efficient use of our resources, we restructured. So some of the positions we have open are attorney managers, and what we want to do with those, we're still going to have an attorney manager position, but we want to, one, bring in training for our prosecutors. So we want to have a chief training officer. We have, that's a big piece in terms of how we address crime and fight the violence. Our attorneys have to be trained, because there's a lot of turnover and newer attorneys. So we're working on having a chief training officer, as well as we have a manager who's going to be over, one, we're creating a manager in terms of how we move our office to a paperless system, because what that does, it saves us all time, money. It saves money in terms of police overtime. It saves money in terms of moving cases. It saves time across the whole criminal justice continuum. And we're working with upgrading our infrastructure, and we have a person who can help us implement that paperless process, because we're taking each piece of our organization, and now we've been for over 50, 60 years paper. We have to have someone to manage that process, and that's where we're using some of the other attorney managers to address those infrastructure issues in terms of turning our office totally paperless.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Alderwoman. Alderman Muhammad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Circuit Attorney.
Thank you.
I think that we need to, when I was listening to my colleagues talk about crime, talk about how people are afraid to be a part of the city of St. Louis or be a resident. I think that it's noteworthy to note that having a prosecutor who's ready to lock up every violent offender she sees is not going to make the city of St. Louis any safer. I think that's going to take a regional collaboration. When you look at crime, it just does not exist in the city. It exists all around the region, including St. Louis County and St. Charles County, and even across the river in East St. Louis. And I think if we don't equip our circuit attorney with the resources she needs to establish regional partnerships, then we're going to continue to see violent streaks of crime. Sure, she can arrest everybody that comes across her desk, but that's not going to do anything but fill up the workhouse and our city jail. So I think when we passed Prop P, I think that was pretty good. I was the sponsor of the amendment that gave you that 1.5. And I have one question. When it says professional services, 250,000, what exactly is that?
Professional services is to fund some of our priorities like our computer infrastructure, paying some of our like regis and different things that we have to pay in our organization, everyday working of our organization. So that is what professional services entails.
So to be clear, so professional services that's not salary raises for your staff,
No, it's not.
but which you still need in order to be successful in your office.
You say what? I'm sorry?
But which you still need in order to be successful in your office.
Yes.
So when we passed Prop P, it didn't go to increase salaries that need to be increased. It went to increase our office technology and to do upgrades in our office to have an efficient running office. Because at the time, she was the only prosecuting attorney or circuit attorney in a state that was still running off a paper system, where everybody else is using computers. So,
And just to clarify, what we've done up to date is we've expanded our infrastructure. Before we had the everyday, I'm not going to belabor you with this, but we had a home internet system in the office. So we expanded our wireless infrastructure so we can put wireless in the courts. We did that. That's never been done before. We upgraded our case management system we were like 4 versions behind. So that's some of the things that we did. We upgraded that. We are going, like I said, we're not slowly, but we're working toward a paperless office. Right now, we do probation and revocations totally paperless. So what that's going to do, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to move to addressing, our different felony trial staff as well as misdemeanor trial staff. So now, one of the things that we have a problem with, prosecutors in one division, they'll say, well, can you handle this case for another prosecutor? We don't have the file. So that saves time and money for prosecutors to, one, have a computer, pull it up, can deal with the case right away, can look at another person's work so they can stand in if possible. At the same time, we're working with law enforcement because one of the things that's instrumental this year we got to prove is we're going to have a paperless police reports coming over. That's going to save us over thousands of dollars of money in terms of $100,000 just in printing and copying alone. So that's going to make discovery faster. We're going to go to e-discovery where we're, sending discovery faster. That means we can move the cases faster on the docket. We're working, but that takes time. We have to implement those in phases, and that's what we're doing.
thank you, Ms. Circuit Attorney.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Mr. Chairman, I have no further questions.
Thank you, Alderman. Appreciate it. Well, I think that's about it. I just want to say, my opinion in closing, I think you're doing an excellent job. The 1.5 million with the Proposition P will help you quite a bit, but at the same time, not restoring that 390 or 400,000 for the diversion program is a problem, and that, like the alderman from the 21st said, keeps you from being a successful prosecutor. I think you're already that, but at the same time, you can do a much better job than what you're doing because you need more tools, and you're not receiving the proper amount of tools to complete the job. And I think if you get more funding, if we could give you more funding, I would. We'll try to see what we can do. Don't, keep your fingers crossed and don't hold your breath because this budget's tight. But if anything I can do to help you out with that diversion program to see that you could receive more funding.
Well, I
we'll do
appreciate
so.
each and every one of you allowing me to speak and, you know,
that you coming.
I thank you for allowing me to work with you guys, and I look forward to going forward in the future. So thank you.
Thank you. You're doing an excellent job. Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Okay, I guess we'll stand adjourned. Thank you.